about learning vocabulary. Vocabulary is the base of the language that you're learning, and all students should have a very good grounding in the vocabulary. Otherwise, it's pretty much impossible to translate, even if you know your grammar really well. So today we will be talking about how we can memorize and not forget 2 weeks later all the new words that keep appearing with Latin. So many of you will be helping younger learners, and I'm going to give you some tips to help them succeed. So if you could say hello in the chat to help me see that I'm actually live and it's actually working, that would be great. Or you can just pop a question. For example, if you're doing a particular course and you find that some of the words in that course, for whatever reason, are difficult to learn, then write it there and I will try to give some tips, or I will look into this. So I'm going to give you 5 tips to help you with your vocabulary. But this is now a bonus tip that I'm going to give you. This is what all those tips have in common. And what all those tips have in common is that there is no one way to learn your vocabulary, that you need to use all your senses. Okay, so if you try to learn your vocabulary, and this will be number 1, by just typing it, it's not going to work. So I know that there are all these testers online. Oh, yes, I'm online. Hi, Tim. Ask us any questions if you need to have your questions answered about Latin. So I'm going to get started because I see I have 4 people already, so we're all in and it's 8. So the first tip that I can give you to help you learn your vocabulary is to see it, say it, write it. That means, yes, we all have the vocabulary testers online where we can drag our words or even type our answers. And they are helpful to get you started, or maybe to revise at a later date when you're already very good with it. But the truth is, when it comes to your exam, you are going to be writing those words. This may be changing with the new generations, but at the moment, there is a lot to say about learning the words by internalizing the movements of the hands, because in your Latin exam, 95% of the time, you will be writing those words and you will be reading those words, and you need to be looking at a piece of paper, not at the screen. And if you think about, I have 2 children that are very young, so I'm not teaching them Latin yet, I promise. I'm just observing them, how they learn how to read and write in English, actually. And all they do is not just go around with a mouse clicking, oh, this is the right answer, this is the right letter, although they do that as well. They learn a lot by tracing with the fingers, by touching, but making the shapes. And in fact, I learned Mandarin some time ago, and that put me in a funny position because I was quite old and learning a new language that was quite alien to me. And I found it was incredibly useful to draw the words and paint the words. And I would remember the strokes and the movements of my hands. So see it, see the word, look at it, observe it, say it. Say that word before you write it. And don't only say it in your mind, say it with your mouth to make sure that you're getting all those sounds there, and then write it. And once you've done this, see it, say it, then write it again, and write it with your hands. Now, another tip, and this is related to the see, would be to use image to link to the words. I know that many of you use little flashcards, and flashcards are useful. I'm not going to say they're not useful, and they will be needed later on when you do more abstract words. But for beginner learners of Latin, a flashcard with a word in English and a word in Latin can become a bit of a problem, because we're talking about younger students. The English is sometimes not that sound, and they may be even struggling to read. So sometimes a flashcard with an image, it can be a drawing or it can be a printed image, is much more powerful. So when you do flashcards, do put images in them. So if you're saying Puella, the girl, don't write Puella, girl, write Puella and put a little girl like the ones you see when you go to the loo, and it's showing you which way to go. Yes, so flashcards and images. We've now seen 2 ways to learn your vocabulary. One of them is, I'm going to have to say the word. I would say this is quite traditional. You see the word on a piece of paper, you say the word, you make sure that you understand what sounds are making up that word. This is very easy in Latin. It's quite transparent writing that it has. So there's one letter, one sound, pretty much. And then write it with your hand. Write it with your hand. Then number 2 is to use images in your flashcards. So don't use flashcards only with words. Initially, you want to put images in those flashcards. Then another tip, number 3, and this is a very important one. You will not learn your words only from memorizing lists or looking through lists or even playing around with flashcards. Those words need to be found repeatedly in meaningful contexts. What does that mean? That means that you should be reading in Latin and you're going to say, well, I can't read in Latin, but you can, because I don't know, most people are using the Cambridge Latin course or Suburani or the Romanis. All these courses have very, very basic texts illustrating each of the grammar points that you're learning before or after you learn the grammar point. You should go back to the stories and read them. There's no need to look at your translation and see what mistakes you did. This is all, once you've done it, that's in the past. But you can read the story and see the words in their context. And for that, I would say the website is very useful because, for example, the Cambridge Latin course one has hyperlinked vocabulary. So wherever you click on the word, it will open up a little square where it says what it means. And that is very useful. I remember when I started uni, my Latin, yeah, it was okay, but I had not done a lot of Latin and I was struggling a bit the first term. And I just spoke to a friend, his name was Jose, and I said to him, I don't know how I'm going to do this. There's so many new words every day. I go to my room and I just stay there with my eyes open. I don't know what to do. And he said, well, you don't need to understand those words. You just take Caesar and read a page every night before you go to bed. And I just thought, that's the weirdest piece of advice I have ever been given. Well, why would I read a text I don't understand, a different one, every night before I go to bed? But actually, seeing words, having that input regularly helps habituate you to the language. And it is a very powerful tool. Your brain is learning. Even if it's not, I know that we aim for comprehensive input that we can understand with the knowledge that we have at the moment. But even if it's not that sort of input, you get an idea for the structure of the language. You get an idea for the sounds of the language, for the combination of words of the language, and you start remembering. So that was number 3, yes. And now I'm going to go to number 4. And number 4 is an easy one that everyone loves. When you learn a word, why not learn the Latin word together with a derivative? So that means you learn the Latin word and then you learn a word in English or in French or in Spanish that you already know, but you link them together because they mean something similar and they're written in a similar way. For example, a favorite one, when you are learning the word canis, you could learn that the teeth in your mouth that are the same as the dog teeth are called canine. Now, if you write in a piece of paper, canis next to canine, you will see that they are actually very similar. And one thing will help you remember the other. So when you see canis in Latin, if you think of canine, you will remember what canis might mean, because now you know they're the 2 teeth that look a bit like the dog teeth, yeah, the long ones. And when you try to spell the English words, and there's always issues with English spelling for reasons that we'll go into another day, you will then know that it's C-A-N-I, yeah, and then the K9 thing. Equally, if you're learning a foreign language, why not just learn 2 for the price of 1? So if you learn fenestra, which is window, together with fenêtre. Great, there you go. You've learned both the window in both languages. And if you want to go a step beyond, I'd say try to throw in a derivative as well. For example, defenestrate. I don't know if you have heard about the word defenestrate. It means to throw something or somebody out of the window. You know that feeling sometimes with your Latin book where you could defenestrate it? That's the feeling, throwing it out of the window. Hopefully you won't do that. And hopefully with these tips, you'll get better at learning your vocabulary. So we have seen see it, say it, write it. Traditional method, but it is very important that you write the words. Then using images. So this would be number 2. Put images in your flashcard. Then number 3, seeing the word again and again in different contexts, because the context tells you a lot about the meaning of a word. So it's very important to read texts that have those new words that we are learning, and not always the same texts, but a variety of them. Number 4 is to use cognates. So think about other words or derivatives that you know from other languages, like obviously English, but if you're learning French or you're learning Spanish, then why not use those as well? And then the final one, which I have to say is my favorite one, and is the one where I'm desperate to learn a word and I can't learn that word. It's always the one I will turn to. This one is acting out the words. And this is very personal, a little bit embarrassing. You don't want to start making gestures in the middle of an exam. But if you have gotten used to a mnemonic that works, even thinking about it might trigger the word. For example, some students like to learn things like, and I have to say, this is very personal. You need to create your own, yeah? So, for example, for lacrima, which is still, you could say, lacrima, lacrima. I know it is a bit silly, but it may help you remember. Or you could say Magnus for big, and then Parvus for small. Or you could say Fortis for brave and strong. Fortis for brave and strong. Should we do that again? Fortis for brave and strong. I found those are very useful. People even use them for grammar. Like this student who he plays the drums, and to remember the imperfect, he thinks about something repetitive, like a drum sound. It's like bam, bas, bat, bam, batis, bam. So he knows that bam, bas, bat is the singular one because it's like bam, 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 bas, bat, and then the plural is the one with many. So bam, batis, bam. And that's not exactly vocabulary, but it is endings and they come inside words. So that counts. I wonder, there's not many of us here today, so I don't know if there will be any questions. However, this will stay as a recording. I will not be live answering the questions that you leave in the recording, but I will be checking the comments. So any question that you put in the comment, I will then address either in a comment or in a blog post that I will write later on about this little live that I've done. Or maybe I'll get another live if it's like a very interesting question and I have a lot to say about it. So it was lovely chatting about this, and please leave your questions below if you have any. Have a good evening.